Elephant in the room. Got my good friend Bobby Cleveland with us back today since March Madness is over.
No,
Bobby,
no, and March Madness is not over.
it's not
The
over.
team's playing right now. Right now, they're playing.
Oh golly, how in the world did we even get you on here, Bob? He goes
Whether
AWOL. He goes AWOL on me. But today we have a very special guest. Darrell, I want to thank you for coming on here with us, and sure appreciate the knowledge you bring and all the things that you're working on. And so we're going to just jump right. We got a really, really interesting topic. I think we probably got more than we can actually get to today, but we want to just jump right in. So, Darrell, if you could kind of explain how you got into this, why that you're working so hard to bring out all of the corruption, and not just DHS, but it's the corruption in the entire judicial system, the people who are supposed to investigate, the people who are supposed to uphold the law and to do all of this thing, and these agencies, and not just DHS, but also OJA, OCCY, and all these other agencies. So if you jump in and just kind of tell us how you got involved and what you're doing.
Well, originally I got involved. I was just a young college kid, wanted to help out with Big Brothers Big Sisters. That's originally how I got involved in the 90s. 3 decades later, working with young men that didn't get the greatest opportunities in life, and our system continually made it worse for them, is why I'm involved. The reason I'm working so hard now is because of some of the, JJ, you might remember just a couple years ago, my time with Big Brothers Big Sisters, my time with furnishing fatherhood, my time with working on the Fathers Forward initiative. I was on the governor's Fathers Forward initiative team. I was appointed and waiting appointment to the OCCY Parents Oversight Committee. I was considered an advocate and a good volunteer for children. Unfortunately, as I gained a microphone, as I got into some of those committees, when they realized I was there to ask for the accountability and the transparency, I was removed from everything. And shots started being fired at my family directly. And so now the reason I'm engaged at the level I'm engaged is, first of all, I'm defending my family. And I can't believe I have to defend my family. I can't believe somebody would take a shot at my family to silence me from trying to help kids. Secondly, I have 4 little boys that are going to grow up in Oklahoma. They may decide to be dads in another state at some point, I don't know. But they should not have to deal with what I've seen parents deal with and what kids have dealt with in Oklahoma. So I want to change Oklahoma for the better before my kids have to deal with what I've now had to deal with, but what all these other families I've tried to help have dealt with. One of the things that I first brought to Chairman Humphrey at the time and his committee and some of the other legislators was this idea that Oklahoma DHS is now the monopoly on protecting children. And by state statute, they have no jurisdiction or authority to even try to protect children. It's not their job. They're not qualified for it. They're not trained for it. They have no legal authority to do it. The protection of children is supposed to happen through what's called multidisciplinary teams. Multidisciplinary teams, which are organized through the district attorney of each district in the state of Oklahoma. And I've beat my head against the wall. I've tried to articulate this. Anytime you bring a kid who's been abused into a situation and you have a DHS worker be the law enforcement officer, that kid loses again. Anytime you bring a kid who's been abused into the system and you have a DHS worker try to be the doctor, that kid loses again. And every time you bring a kid into the system and a DHS worker tries to be the counselor, that kid loses again. And it's actually illegal.
Hey, Darrell.
Yes.
Darrell, you forgot one. When that DHS worker tries to be God, they also lose.
They're going to lose even more. That's correct.
I think they are. So yeah.
And I think JJ's probably tired of me harping on this, but this is my This is what I believe. If this would change, everything would change. And it's actually a crime to impersonate a police officer. But when a DHS worker does it, we applaud them. We ask actual law enforcement not to be engaged. When a DHS worker acts like a doctor, that's illegal. That's illegal. But we applaud them. Same with counseling. And when a DHS worker goes into court and says, "I did the investigation. I actually did a counseling interview with the child, and then I diagnosed their problem," the judge says, "Thank you for doing that," and gives them the credibility in court. And that's how the decision is made for that child, as opposed to saying, "I'm sorry, you're not a CLEAT certified officer. You're not sworn officer. You didn't have a right to that investigation. That was illegal that you spoke with that kid in that way, or that you went and collected that evidence. You're not."
Oh, what happened to us, Bob?
I don't know.
Bob, while we're waiting on him to get back in, he's making the super valid point that these workers are doing everything, and the court and the DAs and law enforcement's letting them, because you know what, especially out here in these rural areas. There he is. Hey,
I
Darrell,
moved you guys.
what we were talking about, kind of picking up what you were saying, but a whole lot of the problem is all these agencies you're talking about, whether it be the judge is obfuscating their duties they let DHS handle it, because guess what? They don't want it. Okay, let's just hear from them. Law enforcement is covered up, so guess what? We'll just let them. They're the experts. So all of these judges, the guardian ad litems, the DAs, the law enforcement are just going, well, the DHS is the experts, and we're just going to let them. So now they go out there thinking their word is gospel. And again, not all of them are bad. When you get a great one, they're great. But when you get these bad ones, and unfortunately, we're seeing more and more bad ones, because we're seeing the level of training drop. We're seeing all the experienced people that know what you're saying is true. They're out the door. They don't want to be around anymore. They're burnt out. And so now we have
Good ones won't stay. Good ones will not stay.
No, they're the ones coming to us reporting all
Correct.
the issues. And so that's what's going on, is that, and the people at the Department of Human Services right now, I mean, can you imagine? We got kids being waterboarded allegedly. We got kids being beaten at a mental health institution. We have kids being sexually assaulted at the OJA, the juvenile facilities. We go in, people report it, they try to cover it up. We know that they knew, and they covered all of this up. We're going to go out with the meeting 2 weeks before we go out with our hearing to out all this. The director of Human Services resigns. Now, some people say, well, that's just coincidental. I personally don't believe it's coincidental. They knew we were fixing to have this. We had already sent them a bunch of stuff. She resigns, but amazing. People need to know this. OJA was getting the same information. OJA had to know that all of this was going on. We know that they knew. And now we get rid of the DHS director, but guess who we make the director? The guy who was over OJA. So guess what? You put the same thing right into a more powerful position. It's like, what is going on? And again, all they do is just cover it up. They keep covering it up.
JJ, when you make these allegations, is that coming from mothers or dads, or is it coming from employees there now? Who's telling you this?
Well, we got whistleblowers. So at the mental health institution, we have a whistleblower come out. Not just one. We have multiple people reporting these things. It's a pretty well-known fact. We got pictures. We got all kinds of things there. When we talk about the Tulsa Detention Center, we have Appleseed report, a huge 350-page done by a group of lawyers and investigators. We have the feds coming in to raid that program. Now people are being charged. You have a hearing that we had where we brought out Appleseed, the report. We brought in Darrell, and Darrell's got massive amounts. We brought in Mandy Reed, who's got another case that just got opened back up because of all the evidence. We have Rosario Chico, and she's got a big information case. So it's not just, and we have multiple cases that we've submitted to say, hey, we have ample amount of information, evidence. And you know what, Bob? We never said, let's go out and arrest people. You know what we said?
What?
This should be investigated. This would rise to the level of being investigated. Now, why, with all of that massive evidence, would the AG, would the governor, would the Speaker of the House, then and now, pro tem then and now, and all these agencies and the OSBI refuse to investigate this? So that's a big question.
I don't know. Can you guys see what this is here?
Yeah.
It's a nice letter.
This is the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation General Counsel sent an entry into a case I have in the Supreme Court just March 20th. And just for some validation, I guess, answer your question a little bit. We believed that lots of people have been asking for these investigations publicly. They were discrediting JJ's his request for the investigation. They dismantled his committee. This would be OCCY. This would be a letter from OSBI acknowledging that the Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth asked them to investigate as well, and they said no. This would be the letter where OSBI said no to the legislator. This would be the letter where OSBI said no to law enforcement. What they're saying no for doesn't meet legal criteria. It doesn't meet any reason other than politics would ensure that for some reason this stuff's not getting investigated.
Hey, Darrell, I also want to add in there that if you go look at the web page, so if you go pull up, if they haven't changed it, if you went up and pulled up the Oklahoma OSBI, pull up OSBI, on that front web page, if it hadn't been changed, it's a black SUV with two officers standing there, and it talks about why they were created. And guess what? Why they were created? Three of the 6 or 7 would be for government corruption, which is what we report, would be for sexual abuse, which is what we report, and child abuse, which is what we report. So we hit 3 out of the 6 things that they were created for. And we have state agencies that have standing requests. And if you look on that same website, it says a legislative committee with the majority of the committee agreeing for an investigation. Well, guess what? We had that.
So I'll tell you, this letter from OSBI actually acknowledges they're refuting why they didn't have to investigate and why the Oklahoma Supreme Court shouldn't order them to investigate. And the biggest reason why they said they don't have to investigate is because it said that request has to be done in writing, which you did, right? But it also says that request has to include specific allegations of crimes that need to be investigated. So, Mr. Cleveland, I want to be careful how I say this because I don't want to speak too much on behalf of other people here, but we were not allowed to release private children's information in the committee hearing or out into public. So those written letters were written directly to the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation by the victims.
And that was by agreement. That was discussed so that we didn't violate. Right. Do you want to violate this? Or You know what I mean?
It was very clearly OSBI told the Supreme Court that they never received those, which is fraud upon the court by the highest, investigating agency in the state of Oklahoma. And I turned in the emails to OSBI General Counsel to the Oklahoma Supreme Court to notify them of that. I'm not losing you guys again, am I?
Yeah.
Why he's struggling, and there he went again. But why he's gone, Bob, just to kind of pick up on what he's talking about. We multiple things. Why would the OSBI, now think about this, why would a group of law enforcement people refuse? That's okay. We're talking about the reason. Why would the OSBI refuse to investigate? Y'all guys think about this. If you were told, hey, the kids were possibly being waterboarded, and you had a whistleblower and you had evidence, kids were being sexually abused, and they're covering up. Kids are taken out of their home without lawful reason.
How are they sexually abused?
The workers are having sex with the residents, underage residents. Bob, it's been verified. The feds went in and raided them. Imagine what it would take to get the feds to raid a Tulsa and a shared detention center between Tulsa and the state. So they're raiding a county and state facility. Guarantee you the feds got to have a lot of evidence before they go in and raid that. They went in and raided it. People are being charged. They verified it. But the question is, how long did all of these agencies know it and cover it up and do absolutely nothing?
Right.
And then again, DHS is falsifying records. They're pulling kids out without any kind of hearing. There's kids that are being out 30, 45 days, no hearing at all, no probable cause to take your kid out. We caught you with some weed. Well, everybody's got weed in their house anymore. Guess what? Is that a reason we're going to start taking kids out because somebody had weed? Lord, we'd have to build multiple facilities, and I'm working on one like that right now. So my thing is these people are violating the law, that they're in the business of taking kids with no reason. I think I'm checking into. I actually asked the Department of Human Services the other day, are you contracted? Is there a company? Because they have this voluntary program. And it's quite funny. They go out there and say, Darrell, if we're going to take your kids right now, but if you'll sign this voluntary program, we will work with you. We won't take them permanently, and we'll get you a program to get your kids back. But if you don't, we're going to take them permanently. Now, sign this volunteer package. That ain't voluntary. That's called extortion, right? I just get an example of extortion. But the question is, are they contracted back to another company on this voluntary program? Are they contracted back? And who owns that company? I got a suspicion that I wrote them in and asked them, is this voluntary program contracted with the company to outsource the program and to make sure all this stuff gets done? And then I said, I want to know who owns the company or has interest in the company, those kind of things. You know what I got?
Nothing.
Crickets. That should be an easy yes, no, and here's who. Guess what? Can't even get an answer.
Right. So back to where we started.
Yes.
These children are being let down after they've had a problem because they're not getting the appropriate investigations done. So they're being further damaged by a system that's not allowing professionals to help them, or the professionals, after they've already let DHS do something they shouldn't have, step in and don't really want to admit they didn't do their job. So now it's getting worse for the kids. So when you show up for court, you've got the multidisciplinary teams by state statute that were supposed to already protect the kid. None of them have done anything for the kid, and they're not willing to admit that in court. So they stack the deck against any advocates for the kid so that the truth won't come out. This is where the rub is. Until today, we've had a few legislators be willing to say something. We've only had JJ be willing to do something. But fortunately, Um, we've talked about this a little bit. Mr. Cleveland, I don't know if you know this has happened or not, but the district attorney out of Lincoln and Pottawatomie County has now asked the attorney general to do a multi-county grand jury investigation
That's a big deal.
into the Oklahoma DHS system and the crimes they're committing by pretending to be law enforcement, by pretending to be doctors, by pretending to be counselors, and the failures of all the law enforcement, doctors, and counselors that haven't been helping these kids. And he's asked for it across the state of Oklahoma.
His name is his name Adam Pantner?
Adam Panter. So this is exactly what we've been asking for this whole time. Now, we have not, this was released on March 14th. And to our knowledge, there's not been an answer from the attorney general or a multi-county grand jury agreed to by the attorney general. But what District Attorney Panter did state was, if the attorney general won't do a multi-county grand jury, then District Attorney Panter is going to do grand juries in each of his counties to show the pattern that Oklahoma DHS is doing in failing to produce appropriate multidisciplinary team members when it's time to protect these kids. So somebody who's law enforcement and has the authority to do this has now asked for this. So it's time for the state of Oklahoma to get behind Adam Panter and tell Attorney General Gentner Drummond, you're behind the 8 ball, but you still have a chance to shoot this. You still have a chance to protect kids. You still have a chance to do the right thing. You've been asked by parents, by victims, by lawyers. You've been asked by law enforcement. You've been asked by the Oklahoma Commission of Children and Youth. You've been asked by everybody. And you keep saying no. I will tell you, I have 2 multi-county grand jury numbers opened up by John O'Connor that have never been investigated, and none of my evidence has been collected during the time that Gentner Drummond has been in his office. And it is this investigation, in particular to kids in my area, kids I have evidence of, kids I'm responsible for, that they've been unwilling to move forward with 2 multi-county grand jury investigations that were already authorized. So now we have a district attorney that's asking for it. It's way past time to do it. I brought with me a couple of things that I think tie this real closely to what happened with the Richard Glossop case, and take the crime of the Richard Glossop case and the crimes against the children out of the equation. I think this shows, when the public says, how could this possibly happen? It goes to the court. The courts look at it. People bring facts to the court. So United States Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote the opinion that explains why the United States Supreme Court had to throw out everything the judicial system in the state of Oklahoma had been doing for how many years? 17 years?
On Glossop, it's 27.
27 years. Why they had to throw out everything. The reason they had to throw out everything is because the attorneys in Mr. Glossop's case violated their constitutional obligation to correct false testimony, fraud upon the court. And thus, Richard Glossop is entitled to a new trial. The problem we have in criminal justice is attorneys know there's fraud upon the court. They enter fraud upon the court. The judge knows it's fraud upon the court, and the justices do nothing about it. And that goes all the way from district court judges, appeals court judges, Oklahoma Supreme Court justices. So I received a letter this week that is probably the most disturbing. I've sat through a lot of court cases that I've been involved with, and a lot of them I just watched. And I've saw a lot of really unfair things happen to children. But you want to talk about disturbing to the state of Oklahoma? State law requires anyone who's representing in a court of law to notify the judge when there is fraud upon the court. Requires. No option. Why did Richard Glossop go 27 years? Because for 27 years, attorneys did not notify the court. People representing court did not notify the court of fraud on the court, right? So on February 10th of this year, due to Oklahoma Statute 5 notifications, I was required to notify the court when there was fraud upon the court. The fraud upon the court was that DHS knew law enforcement had never investigated on behalf of multiple children. But DHS presented to the Oklahoma Supreme Court that 5 investigations had happened on those children. They had no evidence of any investigations. There were no investigations. The Oklahoma Commission of Children and Youth notified Oklahoma DHS there had been no investigations. The Oklahoma Commission of Children and Youth even notified DHS. They never even wrote it down or documented it. Yet their legal team went to the Oklahoma Supreme Court and said there were 5 investigations and there was no abuse. This same attorney that wrote this into the Oklahoma Supreme Court, to prove his point, deposed the alleged abuser. And you know what the alleged abuser told him?
What?
When you say, did I molest these children against their will? My answer is yes. And he still put the fraud upon the court. So I notified the fraud upon the court. I added all the exhibits. I added all the testimony. Unfortunately for me, 15 days later, Sonia Sotomayor made her opinion, and the state of Oklahoma was reprimanded for allowing fraud on the court. You know what happened to my notification in the Oklahoma Supreme Court? It was stricken from the record so that the public could not access it.
What do you mean the public could not accept it?
Cannot access it.
Oh, it says, okay.
Yeah, it is erased. Nobody could see it.
So I'm still obligated to notify the court of fraud upon the court, but it's stricken from the case. So I had service of mail sent directly to the Supreme Court Justice who sent me that letter. And you know what he sent me?
What?
Do not contact me directly again. We will not open your mail. We have no jurisdiction over fraud upon the court.
They have no, he says the Supreme Court has no jurisdiction on fraud upon the court. Well, who has it if the Supreme Court doesn't have it?
Well, here's the funny thing. This is where this will make you puke. They don't have jurisdiction. Unless an investigating agency has investigated it and sent it to them to make a decision about, because judges can't investigate. You know that, right? But guess what? I didn't ask him to take jurisdiction. You know what I did? I asked him, and I'll read it to you. Appellant asked this court to take appropriate action according to Oklahoma Statute Title 5, Chapter 4, Section Rule 2.15. A judge having knowledge that a lawyer has committed a violation of the Oklahoma Rules of Professional Conduct that raises substantial question regarding the lawyer's honesty, trustworthiness, or fitness as a lawyer, in other respects shall inform the appropriate authorities. I didn't ask him to have jurisdiction. I didn't ask him to investigate. I asked him to do what he's obligated by law to do, what the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Oklahoma require him to do: inform the proper authorities. Section D says a judge who receives information indicating substantial likelihood that a lawyer has committed a violation of the Oklahoma rules of conduct shall take appropriate action. I didn't ask him to take jurisdiction. I didn't ask him to investigate. Those aren't his job. His job is to notify the bar and law enforcement, because who's appropriate for a crime that has been committed and it's a felony to commit that crime? Law enforcement. Who's appropriate to look into the professional conduct of a lawyer? The bar. If the judge would have taken his constitutional oath seriously, he would have notified the bar and he would have notified law enforcement, and both of those two would have found very easily there was evidence to recommend back to the judge indictments and loss of ability to practice law in the state of Oklahoma.
Hey, JJ, is that where they're talking about the Brady?
No, what we're talking about here is that their duty to act. Now, there is another thing that we've got going on. So while this is going on with Darrell, I have submitted a brief to the Supreme Court, a amicus brief, which means friend of the court brief. And so we submitted, because what we did, we went out and got a petition. And when we submitted that petition, we tried to submit evidence. So there's an act called the Kelsey-Briggs Act, where this little girl was, massively abused, broke hands, broke arms, just all the time being beaten, and nobody did anything. Girl ends up dead, put in the freezer. They find the girl, and then they make all these laws. Well, simply put, Kelsey Briggs just says, you can't sit around on your ass and wait for the court to get something 6 months later. If you know that kids are being abused, you got to act now. Okay, that's Humphrey's interpretation. All right. So what we did, we submitted all this stuff to the court in Oklahoma City. The judge would not allow us to attach it to the petition. And we're kind of like, hold on, judge. That's part of the petition. You can't pick and choose what you're going to take as part of the petition. Now, the judge is supposed to have a hearing on that petition. The judge don't want to accept this stuff, because if he accepts it, I think he knows he has a duty to act. So he wouldn't accept it. So we send the original petitioner down there with the stuff to say, Judge, we won't put this stuff on the petition and get a hearing set, because they're supposed to give us a hearing to say you didn't reach this number, and we're supposed to be able to say this is why we're submitting and all that. Okay. He wouldn't take that evidence, and he goes down there and immediately closes the case. I send him a what we call certified email, but I attached this stuff to it, attached all these records to it. So when he opened it up, I was like, I got you right there, because now you got all the evidence. He still refused to take any action. So we go over to the Supreme Court. So while Darrell's doing all this, we've got another case going that's saying pretty much the same thing. You have a duty to act, but now they do have standing, because Darrell's saying they don't have standing because it's not their job to investigate and it's not their job to oversee this. In this case, I think it's opposite that. They do have standing because the court failed to act properly on a case that should be. So they either need to take action or send that back down to court and say, you got to act, I think. Now, that should be. Now, I have predicted that they're going to throw it out because I'm too short, or I wore the wrong hat, or something like that. You know what I mean? They're going to find some reason. And then we're going to have to pursue either grand juries, which is great that this grand jury, this DA, man, he just substantiates our case. Does a great job substantiate. So now we have grand juries that are, we're looking at in Garfield County, Payne County, and then possibly Lincoln and Pottawatomie County, which are some of the main counties that this is happening in. So things look pretty. And then if these grand juries occur, I think we have a case out of each one of those counties that we can call everybody back. We can ask the AG, we can call the AG, and if we can get whoever is over that grand jury If they want to, they could call the AG, they could call the speaker, both speakers, they could call both pro tems, they could call the governor, the OSBI, and say, why would you not take your duty? Because any of those people could have initiated the investigation. So again, if they want to say, I'm not responsible or I don't have authority, then what about this other agency that does have authority? So you've turned down an agency, you've turned down the law, you've turned down a legislator. All of those are right there on your front page of how you get an investigation. And the judge and the governor and all of them who have the authority refused to act. The court had the authority, refused to act. So we need to call them all in there and go, you know what? You don't think kids being tortured warrants an investigation? And again, an interesting part of this puzzle, I want people to understand an interesting part of this puzzle. This DA, Adam, how did you pronounce his last name?
I believe it's Panter.
Panter. Okay. So here's what happened before Panter gets there. They've got a guy named Alan Grubbs that's the DA. They have a grand jury in that county. That grand jury comes back and says, we need to indict the district attorney and those involved in all these cases. Okay. Now, what I understand was supposed to happen, that got kicked off. So O'Connor was the AG at the time. My understanding, that got kicked down to Cleveland County to investigate. So Cleveland County is going to be responsible for investigating and bringing charges on this indictment that the grand jury handed down. Guess what happens? Nothing. Now, they did dismiss, so Grubbs got dismissed. Adam Pantner gets appointed. So Adam inherits all of this crap, in which if you read that letter, he's been trying to fix for some time. He didn't jump up and just go, okay. He came in, he knew there's a problem. He's been trying to fix the problem. The problem is now he's coming out and saying, this problem is horrific. It's statewide. You need a multi-county grand jury. Now, here's why I want to bring that up. Who is over Cleveland County at the time? Guess what? It is now Mr. Mashburn. Now, where's Mr. Mashburn at right now?
OSBI.
OSBI. So here we got the director of the OSBI. Now, if you want to look at some of the accusations of what's going on is in these counties, one Cleveland County particularly, they have these places set up that do forensic interviews and all that for these kids. I forget what that one's called, the Mary Abbott House, I think. The Abbott House, I believe, is what that one's called. Okay, guess what? Multiple problems have been reported on that house, okay? Now, why is that important? I'll tell you why it's important, because I was involved with the case where a guy named Gigger, who used to work for Prater as his assistant district attorney, Mr. Gigger is now over, help me out, Darrell, is he over the grand jury process for the multi-county grand jury? He's the guy that kicked yours out. You have evidence to show that he knew it, did it, covered it up, and kicked it out, right? Am I wrong on that or am I right on that?
I have evidence that verifies his internal emails. That's correct, yes.
He got his own email showing it. Now, here's another important. When Gigger was the ADA for Prater, his kid got in trouble on some sexual stuff. I really think if it had been me, we would have addressed it and taken care of it. But instead, they, Prater and Gigger, shoot it off to Greg Mashburn. Now, here's the problem. That's not the process. You had to go to the AG. The AG assigned somebody who wouldn't have any ties to you. Instead, they skip the AG, go directly over here to Mashburn and say, we're going to recuse ourselves. You handle the problem. Well, you can't recuse and then pick who you want to replace you. That's That's not the process. This is a bunch of attorneys I'm trying to tell this to. District attorneys, you'd think they'd know the law, you know. So anyways, we send it over there. Well, guess what? They go to the Abbott house to interview one of these kids in this sexual allegation. Guess what? They forget to turn on the video. No evidence. They lost all the evidence. Nothing done on it. You talk about ugly. You talk about ugly. Now, I don't think the case was that big of a deal. If they would have just addressed it and done it right, no big deal. I mean, it is a big deal, but I mean, it could have been handled. 2 kids, you know, let's go to some counseling and let's let the day go. Now, I get involved and I go find 2 other victims. All this I got on videotape, everything's ready to go. But here's the thing, and I'm not saying that anybody's guilty or not. What I'm saying is it would warrant an investigation why an ADA and the DA did not turn that over to the proper authorities. Why would the ADA down in the next South County involve himself without proper authority? Why would he engage in the case? Why would Abbott House lose all this and then not try to come back and redo it and actually do the thing, and the thing get totally dismissed? And by the way, there happens to be a tape of the one witness calling the boyfriend of one and saying, hey, we know this actually happened, but you got to lie. You got to lie. But I mean, we actually have a tape saying it happened, asking a person to lie about it so that this person doesn't get charged. Now, that's pretty, you know, these are the people that we have over the process that we're asking to go to. So it's like, by damn, do we really want these guys to be over that process? Do I trust the OSBI? And again, I like Mashburn. It sounds like I don't, but he's actually a nice guy. And, you know, I think he would do right by most things. But do I think he would shank something for political purposes? Hell yes, I believe he would. Absolutely, all day. Has he skirted the law in this example I just gave? Yes, absolutely. No question to it. Can I show you that he's the original person on the DA fraud that I have? DA fraud? Absolutely. Now, he's corrected in his county, I think, because guess what? He was the one that filed it, so he had corrected it. But have they corrected it statewide? No, they've continued to conduct fraud. District attorneys conducted fraud statewide, and they've defended their actions. So, you know what? I have real issue with a OSBI director that has all of these issues touching this case. I have real.
One of the things I'll say in the writ of mandamus case, which you referenced, asking the Oklahoma Supreme Court to order OSBI to do their job. You've been asked appropriately. You have original jurisdiction. You just keep making up excuses. You admit that all the appropriate agencies have asked you. Just order them to do their job. I think at this point, if they order them to do their job, they will have to say, in order to do our job, we have to recuse and request a federal agency to do this, because now we're conflicted. I will tell you 2 ways. One, you just mentioned one that's way too close to home, right? There's no way somebody would believe either way they come out with an answer that they were not conflicted. But the other piece that just so you know, I was notified on Friday that I couldn't send the justice anything that he wouldn't open it. I filed again Friday afternoon. It's just what it has to be. I cannot sit this one out. When Oklahoma Commission of Children and Youth asked me to sign a release and a waiver to turn over evidence to the OSBI to transfer jurisdiction to have OSBI investigate, it was asked for by the director, the assistant director, and the oversight specialist at OCCY. OSBI accepted the investigation. This is the part that people don't know. They accepted the investigation. They began the investigation. I have emails them describing how much evidence they have, and it's going to take them a while to get through it. I have these response emails. Then I get an email from General Counsel Shannon Deschereaux, OSBI, and he says, I need you to send all of your evidence directly to me. So I send it directly to him. The vast majority of the evidence I send was Computer Crimes Act. Trying to deceive or falsify information via the internet, falsifying records, destroying records. Most evidence I sent. Original jurisdiction, OSBI. He's like, I got it. Thank you. No way around. He has the evidence. He's required under original jurisdiction to do it. No way around. He's been requested, statutorily requested by City of Stillwater Police Department, Payne County Sheriff's Department, and Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth. Appropriately. This is before JJ even asked for it. So he's investigating. This OSBI employee is investigating. Then for some reason, somebody communicates with somebody and they say, we're closing all your investigations. We're not moving forward with this. That's when I asked JJ to have his committee hearing and have it ordered so that there's no way they could say no. Because there's no way around House rules. There's no way around the Constitution, Article 60. There's no way around statutes that say they have the authority to do this. So they ordered it. And they say no again. Wildly enough, lead counsel OSBI leaves OSBI, and all the attorneys move up a ladder in OSBI. The OSBI attorney, who is now arguing in the Supreme Court that they shouldn't have to investigate, is the employee who accepted my investigation, took my evidence, had absolute obligation to do his job. And now you want to talk about a conflict of interest. He's now entered as the attorney for OSBI, telling the Oklahoma Supreme Court they shouldn't have to investigate, and he failed to notify the Supreme Court he has all of the evidence. He knows the crimes are committed, and he was actually the investigator on the case. He failed to notify the Oklahoma Supreme Court of that.
Yeah, it's a little slip. That's just a little error, a little forgetful error.
Even though I was notified, I got my notification I had on Friday morning. I went back on Friday afternoon and I put literally thousands of documents back on the table at the Oklahoma Supreme Court. And they're going to have to decide whether they're going to say we're going to open those or not, because guess what? I hand delivered them. They don't have to open them. They're already there. They're already accepted, and I already stamped into the case. So if the Oklahoma Supreme Court continues to say that in spite of the United States Supreme Court, they can knowingly allow fraud on the court and they have no responsibility to do otherwise, it doesn't matter what we find out in a multi-county grand jury. It doesn't matter what we find out in a grand jury. It doesn't matter how many kids we cannot use their initials. We can just call them Richard Glossop. None of those kids, even with appropriate investigation, are going to receive justice because there's no integrity in our court system. That's where I stand after Friday.
Well, and here's the deal. I'm involved in Richard Glossop, so everybody knows Richard Glossop was for those that don't know, he's a death penalty case and been in prison 27 years, been on the gurney 3 times, seconds away from being killed. Wasn't because of anything the law, they got the wrong medicine is why he's not dead. We get involved, me and McDougal and some others get involved in the case, and we find fraud upon the court. We find where the DAs intentionally destroyed key evidence, where the DAs intentionally told the only main witness to lie and intentionally told him what lie to tell. Wasn't big enough that they wrote him and said, your testimony that he's already sworn to doesn't line up with the medical examiner, and it would help our case if you would change your testimony. Help our case to perjure yourself and lie. That's called subordinate perjury. It's a charge. And here's what we want you to say change your testimony to line up and help our case. Then when the defense said, hey, this guy's lied, it's perjury, this case ought to be kicked out, the DA jumps up and says, no, this is the first we're hearing about it, so we're all on the same page, so it shouldn't be kicked out. Well, that's another perjury on the court system, because that not only is it not the first time they heard it, they're the ones who told it. We have the paper to prove it. So they put a lie on the court, got the guy to lie, they lied, then they lied about the lie, and we got them dead banger on all of that and destroy evidence, all felonies. And guess what? The Oklahoma appellate court, all of them said, no problem executing. We get it in front of the Supreme Court, most conservative court we've ever had, Supreme Court in my lifetime. They kick it back to us and say, no, because of all this fraud, you have to have a new trial. Now, that's my kind of short version of it. But guess what? When that happens, I predict that guy's going to walk drumming saying, oh, I think he's guilty. Well, based on what? And what are you going to do? You're going to go into court and go, hey, we don't have all this evidence because our people destroyed it. Oh, hey, the main witness, the only case you really have. Oh, guess what? He's lied multiple times. We have it. Oh, guess who put him up to lying? They did. You know what? That's your case. That's what you're going to go on. Guess what? I'm going to predict when that happens, when he walks out, we're going to have a platform here in Oklahoma to really push this narrative that we have a lot of problems in our prison system, in DOC, in our court system. And I've got about 5 cases. Me and Bob's working on a case, a guy named David Fleener. Same players, same stuff, all the same things. We're going to be able to present that. Hopefully he's going to get out. But I've got about 3 more behind that, similar type stuff where they're coercing the witnesses and all kinds of stuff. Again, fraud on court where they're not allowing, the judge won't allow or violates the person's constitutional right to the Fifth Amendment, forces them to testify, gives him the choice. Do you want to present your evidence that you were self-defense, or do you want to keep your Fifth Amendment right, but you can't have both? Yes, you can have both. They're both your constitutional amendment, and guess what? They're your rights. Instead, this judge, and he got caught doing that in one other case, and they did right, but in this guy's, they didn't do right. So we got a lot of stuff coming up, and I think this DA writing this just audacious letter, and I mean just ripping them. I thought he did a great job of pointing it all out. Here's all the problems. And I don't know, Mr. AG's got a little hot potato on his hands because he's wanting to run for governor. And if you can't protect kids, Mr. AG, I don't know if anybody's watching this from your office. You get it, but you got a hell of a hot potato in your hands. And the best thing you can do is do what's right. Do what's right by these kids. Do what's right by Oklahomans. And let's investigate this thing. He needs to step out of it because again, he's the subject of it. Why didn't you do what's right the first time? Why did you ignore all this? Where are you being on this whole case? And he's going to claim, I never do. Well, guess what? You do, because I wrote you letters and I've got them, So they're not going to be able to say that.
We've got quite a few responses from him. They've just never been in agreement to have an investigation.
Well, like I say, you've got 2 grand juries that they've kicked out. I've got letter after letter that I've wrote him, whether it be on these issues, whether it be on corrections issues, whether it be on the rapes, whether it be on human rights violations, on the waterboarding, on the sexual molestation of kids. Again, I mean, he's the subject of why is this not getting done, so he needs to recuse and ask the feds to step in.
Hopefully the reason he needs to double his budget for next year is because he's going to protect kids. Right.
I figure it's to hire himself a lawyer or something. I don't know,
Maybe.
And I shouldn't say that. I mean, they're you know what I'm saying? Just do what's right. That's what I'm saying. Do what's right. If I do something wrong, I'll own it. I get up and own it. But you know what? I can tell you this right now. I'm trying to do what's right, and I'm catching hell for it. I mean, I am catching hell. They've done away with my chairmanship. They've done away with my committee. Hey, them leadership on him, man, they won't even look at me. I mean, it ain't about even saying hi. Them suckers about break their neck. You'd think they'd snap their neck looking away from me if I come walking down the hall. I'm scared. I'm thinking I might have to get them some neck braces or something, keep them from snapping that neck around. But again, that's okay. I don't care because I'm doing what's right.
I do think the Supreme Court has a very important decision to make in that writ of mandamus.
I think they do. I'm going to predict they won't.
9 legislators, senators and representatives, signed off that they believe the House rules, state statutes, and the Oklahoma Constitution gives oversight to the legislator to invoke an investigation by OSBI. 9 different people that were in that meeting all stood up and signed it. If there would have been 100 in there, I think they all would have signed it. There's no way you could have been in that meeting and not signed it. All the legislators in that meeting signed it. Not a single legislator, Speaker of the House, Senator, Representative, anybody, has been willing to publicly sign, state anything that standing committees, as ordered by House rules, have the right to order an OSBI investigation. So why would the executive branch, OSBI, get to tell the legislative branch what their House rules mean? That's a very, very important decision that our Supreme Court needs to make. And there's only one right answer. But if the Oklahoma Supreme Court says that the executive branch can tell the legislative branch what their House rules mean, what their state statute intent is, and what what oversight is of the Constitution, then we're going to need the United States Supreme Court to keep stepping in, because there's no way the oversight guaranteed by the Constitution of the legislative branch over the executive branch should be able to be determined by the executive branch. I'm pretty sure that the executive branch has oversight over the legislative branch in the checks and balances in multiple ways, right? Like you need the governor's signature after you guys vote as a majority to do a lot of stuff, right? There's no way you can tell the governor, sorry, we don't need your signature. We're moving forward with this anyway. That's what our Constitution is here for. So,
well, that don't mean the legislators don't. Legislators violate it, and all of them violate it, and that's why you got the checks and balances. The ideal is it's post checks and balances, and when one, and here's the last question. We got to get off here pretty quick. Last question that we're going to ask is why. That's the thing that we need to talk about. Why would the AG cover up and not allow an investigation into the things that we're talking about? Why would the OSBI refuse, with all of these people asking and all the evidence that they have? Why would they refuse? Why would the court refuse? Why would the governor refuse? Why would the speaker and all of these? And that's what they're hiding behind. They're hiding behind, we all agree these people are crazy. So it makes it look like, oh, no.
Why would the Chief Justice of the Oklahoma Supreme Court?
Why? All of them.
Same thing.
All of them in cahoots together and all working as a big cabal. And it is that way. And that's what if you think we're up against some small little fight or something, no, these people are all getting together to protect the whole front. And again, if you think they ain't nasty, if you think they ain't mean, I will promise you, I'm watching I won't hardly drink out of an open, if I walked off and left my cup on a desk, I don't come back and drink it. If I'm driving somewhere, I'm looking who's following me. And again, it ain't paranoia if it's real. And so again, these are some mean, nasty folks. They will try to ruin you. They'll try to file charges. I've already went and got bondsmen to get me out of jail in case that happens. People think I'm lying. I just dropped a a lawsuit off last week to some really good lawyers. We're fixing to expose every bit of this to show. Don't take my word for it. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Emails, the whole 9 yards. And we're going to be adding some more in because they keep going after us to try to stop us. And what's funny is they're coming back and saying, well, the law's this or that. We're going to add all that in. So it's going to get interesting. Bob, we lost old Darrell, but we got to go anyways. Do you want to add anything?
No, it's very interesting, JJ. It's very interesting.
It's going to get, the heat's turning up, and I think it is going to get interesting before it's all gets said and done. Hey, we're going to leave out of here. I was going to give Darrell a little last word, but he's off, so we'll just get off here. Guys, I appreciate you. Get involved with all this. This is not about just one Oklahoma. This is about the court system here in Oklahoma. It's about protecting all of Oklahomans, protecting your right. Darrell, you want to say anything as we get out of here? He gone. So we're going to just jump off here. God bless every one of y'all. Appreciate every one of you. Thanks, Bob. Go back and watch a little March Madness basketball. Have a good.
Thank you.